Hi, this is Denise Mathew, and today I'm going to make these stacked rings. I've used a combination of gold-filled wire, sterling silver, and also copper. They look really nice together, but you can keep it all one metal if you prefer. Most times I generally work with wire jewelry and wire wrapping and so forth, but sometimes it's very helpful to have a torch available to make little projects that can help you with your jewelry work. And stacked rings are super easy to do, and you need very few tools to do it. I plan on continuing to do small projects and jewelry findings that will be helpful in your jewelry work, so let's get started. I'm working with 20 gauge sterling silver wire. I also have copper and gold filled. I've already cut it, and I'm working with 20 gauge of them as well. And I usually go around the mandrel about a half size smaller than I want to make my ring. The reason why I do that is because when I'm wire hardening it and putting it back in shape after I've soldered it, I use a mallet or a hammer, and this actually makes it size up a little bit bigger, so it's very easy to get it up to the size that I want. So if I want to make an 8, I do cut it about 7.5. There are more technical formulas that you can use. I generally don't do that because I prefer to do it this way, but here's a chart if you're interested, and I also have a link in the description from Kate Rishborg, who is an excellent resource. Do you cut your wire? You want to make sure that the ends of the ring are nice and flush and straight, so you can take a file and file down any burrs or any sharp parts. The whole point of this is because you want your wire to come together very evenly without any gaps or anything like that. That way when you put the solder on, you'll have a perfect solder joint. After you've filed everything you want, then you want to just start to bring those ends together. So I'm just using chain nose pliers to start to fit the two ends together. If you prefer, you can just use your fingers. This is one of the most important parts of making your ring if you want it to have a perfect solder joint. A perfect solder joint means that you're unable to see where the solder was done, so it looks like it's all the same. When you're happy with the fit of the two ends together, then you're ready to solder. I like to use a third hand to hold my ring, and because the wire is fairly thin, it's easy to do this. The other option is just to put the ring right on the charcoal block, and then you can just solder it right there. I like to heat up my metal before I put the solder paste on. I find it just sticks better, so I'm just going to do a quick heat up with the torch. Then I add just a tiny bit of easy solder paste. The more solder paste you have, the more it will flow all over the place, so it's better to use less just to get your joint to completely close. Once the solder paste is on, I take the heat back on, and I'm just going to heat up the whole ring, and if you notice, I go in a circular motion, so I'm heating up the whole ring rather than just one spot. And you can see the smoke is coming, so that's why that's really important to be in a well-ventilated area. Watch closely, there's a little mound of solder paste, and as I continue to heat it up, it suddenly goes flat, and that's when the solder flows and my joint is closed, and that's when you would stop. And then quench your ring in a bowl of water. If you notice, I have a bowl there, and then your ring would be completed. Now it's ready for cleaning. And here's one more look at what can happen when your solder paste will actually start to flame up. And not to worry, just continue on, and eventually it will flatten out just like it's doing right now, starting to flow. It's not quite there. And once you see it perfectly flowed, then it's done. After I got the fire scale off by cleaning it, I'm just filing that area where I soldered to make sure it's nice and smooth and nice and a little bit slightly flat, just to take the ball. Now to make a ball, all you need to do is just have a little bit of scrap silver, sterling silver, and I just have a piece here. Now you just want to heat it up, and what it'll do is it will naturally ball up. If you want, you can actually cut specific sizes of your wire so that you'll know exactly how big the balls will be, and you can just practice and figure out what works for you. Since my piece of wire was a little on the large side, it actually broke into two, so now I'm going to have two balls instead of one, which is perfectly fine. Balls are formed, you just want to let them cool off a little bit, turn back to the metal color, otherwise they may be not quite solid enough, and then you're just going to quench them in some water. Because I'm using fine silver, you notice that there's no fire scale at all on the silver, so it's nice to use it for this kind of a purpose if you have it available. So now I have 2 balls, and they'll be available for using on rings. Now the ball is formed. I'm going to place it exactly where I want. I generally like to put it exactly where I soldered the ring. That way it covers up the solder point. Once it's heated, I'm just going to add some more solder paste right where the ball connects to the ring band. Oh, then I'm going to take the heat again and go in circular motion, moving the heat all around rather than focusing in one part. And what will eventually happen will the solder will actually start to flow and the ball will be pulled in close to the ring, and that will mean that it's attached. And if you look closely, you can see the ball pull in close to the ring. Now you're just going to quench it and then put it in the pickle to clean. Once the ring is clean, then you can start to bring it into shape. You can use your ring mandrel and a mallet. This is a rawhide mallet, so this will not leave any marks on it. Now if you wanted to have a hammered effect, you could use just a regular ball peen hammer. Now the mallet will wire harden it, but it will also size it up a little bit. Now this is a ball peen hammer, and that can be used to texturize it. You're going to use the rounded part to texturize it. And if your ring isn't the right size, you're going to continue to hammer the ring, and you're going to angle your hammer slightly as you start to hammer and slightly guide it down towards a bigger part of the mandrel. And this will slowly size your ring to a bigger size. After your rings are cleaned and sized, what you can do is use a file. Now I'm only needing to use this file because I'm using copper and silver, so you want to get rid of any extra solder that's showing up, and you're going to file it off so the copper will show through again. But if you're using all sterling silver, you won't have to do this unless there's lumps or something that are kind of bumpy and you want to smooth it out. The last ring I want to make is just a double ball ring, and all it is a piece of wire, and you're just going to ball up each end and then just going to wrap it around the mandrel. You can use the guide that I just showed you to measure how much wire you need to make the size ring you want, but it's okay if it's a little bit bigger because it's adjustable and it's just going to go around your finger, and you can tighten it as much as you like so it will overlap a little bit. I'm using 5 inches of a 16 gauge wire, and I'm just going to continue to heat the end until it starts to ball up. And the heavier gauge you use, the longer it takes for it to ball up. And if you can see, it's starting to ball up a little bit right now. And it's important to heat on the ends, not in the center of the ring or anything, because what will happen is it'll start to melt through the ring and the ring will break and it'll start balling up in the center. Alternately, you can hold the wire up in front of you over the charcoal brick, and you can start to use the heat, and you notice the blue tip of the torch is right below it. That's actually the hottest part of the torch. Again, you don't want to go too high up on the wire, you just want to go below because you want to start to push the ball with the heat upwards rather than doing it and just a ball will just drop off or something like that because it'll get too hot. So you want to have your balls equal, so I'm just turning it over and trying to increase the size of the other one so they're even. And that would be your finished ring. And all you need to do now is to clean that, and then you can shape it on the mandrel. So now if you want to polish your rings, you can just put them in with a shot, a little bit of water, and a little bit of detergent, and shake it for about 10 minutes. So everything's been shaken, and as you notice, it's all nice and polished now. And I'm going to put that on the ring mandrel. But before I do that, I'm just going to wire harden it and also straighten it with the nylon pliers. Ring will be exactly the size ring you want, so you're not going to size it up or down, you're just going to size it exactly what you want. So if you want an 8, you're going to go right around the ring mandrel at 8. All your rings should be sized before you polish them, so that the polishing is pretty much close to the last step. So I'm just looking at all the rings now. And you can notice how using different gauges of wire completely changes the looks of each ring. Then you just want to take your rings and put them on the hammering block. Now if you have a little bead on them, you want to hang that off the sides because you can't really hammer that. And just take the flat side of your hammer and just kind of hammer down on it. And what that's going to do is wire harden it a little bit, and it will also make it nice and straight and flat. And do this with all your rings. And the last thing you want to do is to make sure that all your rings are the right size, and if they're not, you can size them up. So this concludes the tutorial. I hope you liked it. If you did, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. We'll see you next time. Thanks for coming. Bye for now.